With Lucky Land Slots, you can get lucky just about anywhere.
Dearly beloved, we are gathered here today to... Has anyone seen the bride and groom?
Sorry, we're here. We were getting lucky in the limo and we lost track of time.
No, Lucky Land Casino, with cash prizes that add up quicker than a guest registry.
In that case, I pronounce you lucky.
Play for free at LuckyLandSlots.com. Daily bonuses are waiting. No purchase necessary. Void where prohibited by law. 18+. Terms and conditions apply. See website for details.
Lucky Land Casino, asking people, what's the weirdest place you've gotten lucky?
Lucky? In line at the deli, I guess?
Aha, in my dentist's office. More than once, actually.
Do I have to say?
Yes, you do.
In the car before my kids' PTA meeting.
Really?
Yes.
Excuse me, what's the weirdest place you've gotten lucky?
I never win and tell.
Well, there you have it. You can get lucky anywhere, playing at LuckyLandSlots.com. Play for free right now. Are you feeling lucky? No purchase necessary. Void where prohibited by law. 18+. Terms and conditions apply. See website for details. Lucky Land Casino, asking people, what's the weirdest place you've gotten lucky?
Lucky? In line at the deli, I guess?
Aha, in my dentist's office. More than once, actually.
Do I have to say?
Yes, you do.
In the car before my kids' PTA meeting.
Really?
Yes.
Excuse me, what's the weirdest place you've gotten lucky?
I never win and tell.
Well, there you have it. You can get lucky anywhere, playing at LuckyLandSlots.com. Play for free right now. Are you feeling lucky? No purchase necessary. Void where prohibited by law. 18+. Terms and conditions apply. See website for details.
How you doing? It's Mick Tully for the World of Martial Arts Television, and I've already apologised to him ahead of time because the intro is going to be a bit of a gusher. Because the thing is, I'm with Kev Capel, who's literally an OG when it comes to BJJ in the UK, first of all. But in the world of martial arts, where you're full of like complete clowns, and 9 times out of 10 guys you just wouldn't want to spend any time with, Kev's one of the very few that's just a really just good, decent guy. I mean this. Every time I see him at a competition, right, it just lights up and it just makes my day because we always have a great chat and we talk about and it'll be small talk for about 30 seconds, and then it's like he'll say something that'll make me go home and I'll have to rethink everything. So and I do mean that, Kev. It's like we'll get into it as we're chatting. But yeah, okay. Mate, I've been trying to get you since the British No-Gi 2014 to get you to do a podcast. That's how long it's taken to get you here.
Unreliable, that's how unreliable.
No, you're the man. You're the man. So what we're going to do is, first of all, welcome, and secondly, we're going to start at the beginning because it's always a good place to start. Okay. How did you get into martial arts, man?
Well, I guess I wanted to do some karate when I was a kid. I think I was about 10 or 11, something like that. And maybe it was Karate Kid or some film. But my dad took me down to the local karate school and they didn't start till 12 years old. So I was just a bit young. So my dad took me to a boxing club because he knew one of the coaches there. So I started boxing in 1985, 1986, and I had my first amateur bout when I was 11 in 1986. So I started with boxing, kind of fell in love with that. It's right in the Hagler Hearns. I think that's the first fight I ever watched was Hagler Hearns 1, wow. As a 10-year-old. I mean, because the thing is, I watched Rocky, that was a big film, 1984, 1985 when I saw it, big film, Rocky 1, Rocky 2. And then I watched Hagler Hearns and I was like, oh, it's like the films. Because that was like a thing from a film. It's not a normal fight. So I just kind of fell in love with boxing. Didn't really want to do anything else once I started boxing. Joined the army, was told at the recruiting office that, you'll basically get to box full time, which was a load of rubbish. But that also made me, because I'd had enough of school. I'm much more academic now than I was when I was younger. The army was a way to continue the boxing, which I managed to do a little bit, but not as much as if I'd have been in different regiments. Because what you find out when you're in the army is it's very fragmented. So some regiments will have really strong boxing teams, some regiments will have really good tug of war teams, and you won't really get to excel in any other sport if it's not the regimental sport of choice kind of thing. But did manage to box a little bit. Along the way, got to meet some karate guys and kung fu guys, you know, early 90s. And anytime it kind of kicked off in the barracks, they weren't really any more prepared for it than anyone else, apart from like the boxers and rugby players. They were the tough lads.
Yeah.
So, you know, I stayed on the course of boxing, and then only really got into I now, at the time, I didn't consider boxing a martial art, but now with the onset of MMA and everything, it's definitely a sport first, but it's a very key component of good martial arts. So, but to me, the kickboxing side of things was always true martial arts. So I started that when I left the army. I was going to box, but a girlfriend knew a guy who ran a kickboxing club. So I went there, and sparring with the guys, I could kind of rely on my hands a lot, a little bit of taekwondo type kicking stuff. And then because I get into stuff, if I do something, if I like something, I'm all in. That's probably my character, really. I'm either all in or all out. If I'm not really into something, it'll never really get me to commit to it. But her friend run a kickboxing club, so I went there, and then I was training every day, and they weren't running enough sessions for me. And someone said, "Oh, well, there's actually a guy called Neil Macleod who lived around the corner from me, who was married to the daughter of my dad's best friend."
No way.
Yeah. So
Rachel.
Rachel is Kevin Flynn's daughter, and Kevin Flynn worked with my dad for a long time. One of the reasons I'm called Kevin is because his best friend was Rachel's dad, called Kevin.
Oh wow! I
believe that was one of the reasons, or certainly that was said to me as a kid. Oh yeah, you're named after me, kind of thing. So there was a connection there. Went and see Neil, and obviously, Neil and his lineage with Bob Breen and Dan Inosanto. I immediately seen a massive difference in the style of training and the functionality. Neil loved my boxing. He was very complimentary straight away, going, "I know you got good hands, you'll do well." So, I found home with Neil. We went up to Dan Inosanto seminar up at Rick Young's up in Edinburgh. And on the way back, he said, "Oh, I've got an MMA fight." And I'd worked the corner in the boxing, doing the boxing bouts. And I said, "Who's in your corner?" He said, "No one." This is like year 2000, 2001. He was doing an MMA fight, and I think he had one of the guys from the gym maybe doing his corner. So I said, "Well, I've done corners, so I can help you out." Watched this fight, which was excellent. It was him versus Danny Batten.
Yeah.
So Danny Batten's an old school guy as well.
He is indeed.
And I see the fight, and I was like, "Fucking hell, yeah, I fancy that," because that's MMA. So I said to the promoter that night, I said, "Oh, can you get me on the next show?" And then it all started from there. I've been training with Mauricio for about 6 months. That was off of the back of a Bob Breen seminar down in London.
Yeah.
Rick Young Rick Young was a blue belt, I believe, from Higgin. But he had a lot of respect for Mauricio, and he showed an armbar, and I was like, "Man, where can I do more of this?" And he said, "Well, honestly, you're probably best off going to a judo club." And then I think he told Neil, "Oh, Mauricio started up near you." And Neil said to me, "Oh, if you want to do more jiu-jitsu up in Marylebone there, you can do some jiu-jitsu." So
that was when Mauricio was in Marylebone then, yeah?
Yeah, Marylebone. And Marylebone from Aylesbury Station, it's a direct route. It's 55 minutes. And back in the day, if you had to, you could jump the turnstiles and there wasn't too much. So, it was doable. Getting up there was doable. Less than an hour journey. Sometimes free of charge if you come back late enough. And so I could train with Neil, train with Mauricio, and off the back of what Rick Young said, I'd started doing some judo at a local judo club. So, and that was all around 2000, 2001, just so I was kind of leaving the army. After the 9/11 attacks, I had to go back for a year, just on tour in Kosovo to make up the numbers there while everything was going a bit crazy. But yeah, all about the time I left the army, boxing was everything I'd done, and then bumped into Neil, bumped into Mauricio, started doing judo off the back of a really young armbar, and it just come together from there. And that was all 2000, 2001.
It's so interesting you said that, because my real introduction to jiu-jitsu was obviously, you remember the good old days. You pick up Combat magazine. This back when magazines were worth reading, right? So you pick them up and there'd be some guy working out of like a social club or a school hall, and then there'd be a little article, and it'd be on about the Gracie Challenge. And I've said this so many times. I used to look at it and go, like, I used to look at it, and then immediately I thought it was like, like the Johnny Cash song, A Boy Named Sue. And I was like, they're all called Gracie. That's a girl's name. No wonder they're all fucking tough. You know what I mean? And then you realise that that they properly put it out there to everybody. And you had the old school Gracie Challenge way before, the UFC. And I was like, I saw it, and I've said several times before, first time I ever watched MMA, it was too visceral for me. And I've been training with Jeff Thompson and like Andy Margaret in Coventry. So I'd seen it, but it was still too visceral to watch. But to my shame, I couldn't see how beautiful the jiu-jitsu was. So I flapped it. But the first time I ever did any real BJJ was JKD seminar. Rick Young's teaching it. And I'm like, oh, this. And, like Rick's doing that. And he's, 1 minute he's doing like this Mawashi Gary Gidan roundhouse kick. Yeah. Then he's doing an arm bar that looks like something out of Neil Adams' back pocket. And you're like, I want to be like the next equivalent of that or somewhere near to that. But like when you were training, it's crazy, man, crazy. But if you don't mind me asking, what was the early days like? Because when I first met Neil, by the way, I met Neil at an Ino Santo seminar, right? Him and Rachel. And then the next time he was at Cage Warriors, 2004, I think, or 2005. And he was fighting Paul McVeigh.
Paul McVeigh, yeah.
Yeah, and my mates at the time were running Cage Warriors. And what they did was they gave me the money in readies, and I had to go up and give it to Rachel in the stands. And Rachel was there with the kids at the time. And it was quite a famous fight because that was where he turned up. And he wasn't wearing a groin box. Goddard was reffing it. And Goddard says, you haven't got a groin box. And Neil was like, do I have to wear one? And Goddard's like, I'd advise you to wear one, but you don't have to wear one. So he fought that, and then the streaker came in and everything. But those early days, do you remember it, right? So those early days of like MMA was like the Wild West. So what was it like training with Neil Macleod? Was it as intense as I can imagine?
Yeah. I mean, Neil elevated my level through the roof, really, because we were the same weight. I wasn't working like regular work. So I was available to train. I think I booked a load of privates with him because I just wanted to train with him anyway. And we ended up kind of becoming sparring partners. And I think I trained with him. I think Neil had 17 or 18 fights, which is a lot. And I think I must have been his main sparring partner for at least 14 or 15 of them. Wow. I would say that's probably correct. Definitely double figures. And we're still good friends now. It was his birthday on Halloween, so we just quickly spoke by text. But we're still friends now. We don't train much together. I don't think we, either of us train in the same way anymore. But at the time, we would do 10 5-minute rounds of MMA sparring.
That
10's an even number, and 5 minutes was the length of the rounds. And
wow. And what people don't understand is like Neil Macleod was one of those guys that right now, if he'd have been born 15 years later, he'd be in the UFC with his work ethic and killing it.
When Neil was at his peak, there wasn't even a middleweight category in the UFC. It was just open weight, and we kind of knew. I mean, I think it's one. Not saying that I'd have been any good at MMA or anything, but one of the reasons I kind of went in the direction more of jiu-jitsu was because I knew that at 61 kilos on fight day, the UFC wasn't really a realistic path for me. No. And I think Neil felt the same. The size difference would have always been a factor, and it wasn't even available to people from the UK anyway. Lee Remedios, Mark Weir, James Zikic, and Ian Freeman. They didn't get in it until, 2004 or 2005? Yeah.
I was at the Albert Hall, and they were outside giving away tickets. Yeah. Right? If you ever look at the footage of that, the place is half empty. Right? And it was like they couldn't do it. But yeah, those early days, it is funny you said that, because like Eric Paulson's back over, and like Eric's a legend, right? There's so many. Yeah, he's coming over. So he's coming back over before Christmas. But I remember when I met Eric first, Eric said he had a conversation with Dana White, and he said, the way you're going to make this sport work is weight divisions and gloves. And like, I still remember this conversation, and you look at it now and you go, how draconian that it wasn't even gloves. So that's going to lead me on to, once you first met Maurizio, right? Can you just explain your first real experience of rolling with like Maurizio or Roger, or just the first real experience of like being under someone that you just go, I can't believe I'm here?
Well, I mean, I didn't spar with Mauricio for probably until later on as a white belt or maybe even a blue belt, just because, you know, he was an awesome black belt at the time. And, you know, obviously he's red and white belt now, but at the time he was a legit black belt from Brazil. There was no need for him to roll with me. Do you know what I mean? My first day at his gym in Seymour Place, I rolled with a blue belt called Asif, who's a black belt now. And Asif was fantastic, but he was under 65 kilos, you know, always a light guy. So I was a similar size, if not a touch bigger at the time. And he had his hands in his belt, legs wide open, just going, come on, pass my guard, pass my guard.
No way.
And I couldn't. And I was getting annoyed because, and I love the guy. He's a good friend now. Asif is a very good friend. But at the time, in my still squatty mentality, I was like, I should be kicking this guy's ass. Do you know what I mean? Yeah. And he just had his way, you know, sweeping. And he was a very good blue belt, even for the time. But yeah, he just had his way, and a few guys did throughout. But Asif always sticks in my mind because he wasn't even trying. And as I left, you know, I did the full session, did the stretch, got changed, and as I left, Mauricio just patted me on the back and said, "See you next week, sir. Like, have a good week," like that, and that was it. And that cheered me up a bit because I was feeling pretty down, and I don't want to be crude, like I was a different person back then, but I do remember thinking, if that was prison, I'd have just been fucked. Yeah, I cannot allow that to be the situation. And you know, now saying it out loud, but that was the thought that went into my head. Because I was like, man, if that was a situation where those guys want to do something to me, what's the worst thing that can happen to a man? You know, in my opinion, that would have happened to me, and I wouldn't have been able to do anything. And on the train, carry on. Most people have this experience. They're close to tears sometimes after their first jiu-jitsu experience. And I was like, okay, I've got a choice. Either I can hope that this is just some kind of fitness fad, martial arts fad that's going to die a death, and I'll never have to worry about it. Or I need to get half decent at this. I need at least to be blue belt level in this. Otherwise, I'm not going to sleep at night. And that was my first.
Oh, mate, you won't believe this. It's so bizarre because a bit like yourself. Actually, I should add, after speaking to you at the last British Open, and you were talking about reintroducing some kickboxing into your classes, I've been doing is I'd avoided doing just no gi. So I've been teaching like CSW, MMA, grappling, the whole lot. And then I was thinking, if Kev's going back, I'll go the other way. And what I'll do is, because everyone's predominantly striking and doing Kali, get them to do grappling. And so, but taking out all of the so-called equalizers, as you were saying, well, I'll just knock you out and I'll do this. It's like, you know, the classic line from Terry Barnett, everyone used to say, yeah, but, you know, a good right hand will do that. He goes, yeah, but I've got a good right hand too. But what I did was I brought the grappling in, and I was teaching today, and I got a guy and went knee on belly on him, and he was like that, oh! And I went, stop the class, and I went, don't, right now, can I just say something? I'm just going to I'm going to formulate this for you now, because I know where you are, mate. I said, the first time I ever did jiu-jitsu, a guy did a knee on belly on me. And when he did it, it was the fact that it was like Patrick Swayze at the end of Ghost. Like my body was, like the soul was coming out of my body. And I remember thinking, I can't live in a world. Bear in mind, I didn't start jiu-jitsu properly for another 2 years after that, because I still rationalized it in my head that it might not carry on. You know what I mean? People might get bored of it. But I remember going and I thinking to myself, first of all, I can't live in a world where another human being can do that to me. Right? That's one. And then exactly the same story. I use that now. I said, I was there and I was thinking, if I was in prison now, they'd have their way with me. And then I was there, and do you know what? They'd make me want to enjoy it. And they were like, what? I said, that's how much of a kick in it would be. They'd be like, look like you enjoy it now, mate. And I said, I wouldn't be able to do anything because it was so, and I know like we're making light of it, but you know, I hope you don't mind. I'm going to use this to segue into it, like a conversation me and you had, and you might not even remember it. It was after one of the Nogi British Opens, and we were going to the car and we were talking, and we were talking about the old days of Jeff Thompson training, the animal days and stuff like that. We talked about violence, and it was, believe it or not, it was the first moment that I was like that, because I always liked you, Kev. But when I talked to you, and it was one of those moments where you talk to someone and you go, what I thought is violence, you know, where I've been in bar fights, did some door work, stuff like that, trained with tough guys. And then it was as I went back into my car, I was like that, have a word with yourself, Mick. You're speaking to a guy who actually knows. Because we were talking about, you know, man's inhumanity to man, training, stuff like that. And it got pretty, like, I'm not saying heavy, but it was one of those, you know, one of those, how me and you, yeah, you know how me and you talk sometimes, right? And we got there, and I remember you turned around and you just went out. He goes, yeah, people think they know. He goes, I know real. I know what it's like. And then, like, and you only touched on it, and I don't want you to go into details, please. But I remember you saying about when you were in Bosnia and Kosovo, and you said to me, you went like, he goes, you want to see evil? I know evil. And I remember, because you said it to me, and I had to chill, because it was one night, and it was mad, because I was a grown man who thought I knew about violence. And that was, like, if you don't mind, I'll get you to expand a little bit, if you don't mind, on just how people think it's a bar fight. And then you said that one sentence to me, and I was like, I'm such an amateur to understand that. Like, so you mentioned the squaddy mentality. So can you expand on, you know, what has got you to where you are now by seeing the stuff that you've seen?
I mean, I guess there's two levels, and I'll caveat it first in that, you know, lots of people serve in the military, and, you know, I'm nothing special. I did, you know, 10 years, had a great time, but there's people that have done way, way more than me and been in way, way worse situations than me. But, you know, I had a few. I guess there's two sides. One was the barrack room mentality, because you live in the block if you're single, which is like a small block of flats usually, and a lot of times it's 4-person rooms or 4-man rooms, because it's all guys at the time. It may have changed a little bit now, but you know, that's pretty much, so you're basically in a block of flats of 100 squaddies in 4-man rooms, and you're not, you know what I mean, and there's pressure through the day. You're away from home, you're away from family. I mean, I spent a lot of time based down in Lark Hill, which is only 2 hours away from Aylesbury. But you're away from home. You stay there every night. You know, you get weekends off maybe if you're not on tour. So tensions get high. You know, first of all, you got your roommates, where people not doing their laundry after a certain point. If you're at breaking point, I mean, I've seen people get their heads cracked open for swigging a Coke out of the wrong bottle of Coke, drinking someone's Coke out of the fridge. I've seen them get weighed in for that. We had one situation where a guy was thought of as a hippie, and he got ironed. The 4 of them held him down, and they put a hot iron in his chest and ironed him. One of the guys went to Colchester Nick for it, but that happened in the block. Yeah. High suicide rates in the army through bullying and things like that. You see that tension build, and sometimes people let off steam, and a lot of times it'd be a dust up. Sometimes it'd be a fair square go. Yeah. But you know, these are not particularly nice stories, but I tend to tell them with a little bit of humour, because they are funny in a certain way. I see a fight start where one guy was asleep in his bed still. So they had an argument downtown. One of my friends come to get me because he was going to have this fight. He goes, I can't remember the guy's name now, but say it's Smith. We're going to go and get Smudge. I'm going to go and get Smudge. He was rude to me downtown, right? We've gone into the room and Smudge is in bed asleep. So I'm expecting my friend to wake him up and restart the argument. Worst case scenario, or walk out and go, I'll see him in the morning. Yeah. No, he just starts fighting with him. He gets 2 or 3 good shots in before Smudge wakes up, and then Smudge wakes up and he's in a fight.
Yeah.
You know, and that was a Saturday night. Do you know what I mean? It was not, these aren't uncommon stories. I mean, I spent 3 months in Norway with the Paras as one of their drivers because I was Arctic trained. And I think it was one para took over the infantry role. And while they were doing their training out there, they just needed some other guys driving. So I was driving for them as a over snow vehicle driver so they could go and get their skiing practice in. One thing, being a non-para, working with the paras is a rough day in the office.
Yeah.
And two, just the way they handle their new guys. I mean, like I say, people have done much worse than me, and I see how hard they get it. It's a rough environment. So there's always this kind of air of potential violence.
Yeah.
You know, pushing in front of you in the dinner queue. In McDonald's, that's probably not going to kick off. But in the barracks or an exercise or an ops, it's probably going to kick off. You know, so there was there was that side. There was the actual in-house army side where there's always an air of violence. I mean, look, you don't tend to think of it like this, but now I'm a little bit older. You're going to get your gun from the armory because it's weapon cleaning day, or we're going to have an afternoon. We ain't got much to do, so lads, go and get your rifles out, give them a clean, put them back in the armory. That's what we're going to do. But what's that rifle for? It's a machine gun.
Yeah.
It's only got one use. You can't change the light bulb with it.
Yeah.
So on your lap, you've got a machine gun that you're stripping down and cleaning because you might need to use it. And what are you going to use it for? So there's always this kind of undertone of violence, you know. And when I was in the army, sergeants could get away with hitting you. I mean, that whole kind of, do you want to go on charge or do you want me to give you a kick in? That was a real option when I was in. And a lot of guys would take the, I mean, I got caught speeding once. That was in Norway. And the battery captain, who was an old ex-para, so the battery captains are usually 25-year plus guys. And I'm a young 19-year-old spinning around on the snow, just being a prat with the lads. He come up, he pulled me out the truck, punched me in the stomach and stomped me in the snow, and then just walked off shouting speed kills. And I knew I'd got away with something because I weren't going to go on charge.
Yeah.
So, you know, there's that. And then you got the external. My tours of duty were the Balkans. I spent about 3.5 years in total in the Balkans, Bosnia and Kosovo. So again, that level of conflict compared to what my friends did in Afghanistan and Iraq was a much higher level of op tempo. You know, they were actually getting into firefights, putting a lot of rounds down. Bosnia was more minefields and sniper. But you did have the mass graves. And but one in particular, a village called Macleod, we had to go and guard the mass graves because in this particular one, it was the Serbs that had created the mass grave. And they were coming back at night to try and cover up the evidence. So they put lime on the bodies to decompose the bodies quicker. Yeah. They've lost it if they've left any gear there. So because they know that there will be eventually, long time down the road maybe, but eventually some of this stuff will go to court or there will be reprisals for it.
Yeah.
So we were put there to guard the mass grave to stop any vandalism or desecration of the bodies. And in this particular one, there was hundreds and hundreds of people, not 10 or 20,
wow,
but hundreds, and all women and children. I mean, it's a bit, you know, I wasn't weird looking, but, you know, this is why we were there. And it was all just women, children, or if there was a guy, it'd be a very old guy. So no one of fighting age. So they had gone into this village and they had just rounded up non-combatants and killed them. And
wow,
they don't just kill them, mate. They desecrate the bodies. They cut the ears off because they keep them on a belt. If they're pregnant, they cut the baby out. Seen that.
wow.
If they're really twisted, they'll push other stuff in.
Yeah.
So it's a bit dark. It's a bit dark. You know, I don't want to get too deep on it or whatever, but that's the level that it goes to. And that's why, and again, I have different feelings on governments and armies and stuff like that now. I think people generally do as they get older, but seeing some of the stuff that was going on in Ukraine when they started talking about mass graves and stuff, it does affect you a little bit, you know, if you've been around that stuff, because you just feel how helpless those people would have been. And and you know, when people talk about knocking something, this is probably where our conversation stemmed from. You know, people talk about, oh yeah, I'd done this geezer in the pub, I headbutted him and knocked him out. You know, and I've been guilty of that kind of chat. You're like, you don't know where that stuff leads, mate. Or when people hate speech, you know, racist or whatever, any kind of bigoted speech, it's like, mate, you don't understand where that stuff can lead.
It gathers momentum, because the thing is, I've never told you this, but when we talked about it, and it was the fact that you mentioned Bosnia and Kosovo to me, because I got into the club, because I lived in Germany for 5.5 years. And so I knew a load of Bosnians. I knew quite a few Serbs as well. And the mad thing was, you're working on a building site, so you're working with all these different guys. And again, it's that whole thing where it's like, you know, oh, all Albanians are like that, you know, it's all Albanians are criminals, that all Romanians are thieves. Like, you know, the one thing that, you know, to make a bit of a funny aside, every Polish guy I ever met has been a wrestler. I have to admit that, you know what I mean? Every Polish guy I ever met, they can kill you. But the thing is, you said it to me, and I was like, because I had a flashback to it when I was out. Flashback, but I was in a bar, and it went really, really, like, you know when you just know the menace is coming in, and I was like, man, and there was all these guys in there, and it just the whole thing changed for a second. And my mate said to me, he goes, "You better get out," and he was a Bosnian lad, and I said, "Why?" He goes, "They're all Serbs," and I was like, and I was ignorant of it all, but then obviously as you get older, you look at it and you go, you know. So some of it, you start thinking to yourself, well, you know, the dictator bit, none of them killed each other when they were all under the jackboot of Tito. You know what I mean? He kept them all in line then. But the thing was, like, it came in, and it was one of those, like, and you know, I had a gun pulled on me by an Armenian when I was in Germany, and I thought that was pretty rough. But when these guys came in, and you were just like, somebody is going to get killed tonight in here, and my mate turned around to me and goes, "This is nothing to do with you. You got to get out of here now." And I said, "What's going to happen?" And he goes, "We'll see." And then there was like a bit of machismo and everything, but I had no idea. And then when me and you talked about it, I remember that, as you said, that blood curdling feeling where you're like something bad's going to really, really happen, right? And it is mad. It was like you were saying, it's like all of that hatred only starts from something small, and it gains momentum, and that's why you've got to be very careful. You know what I mean? Everyone thinks it's, you know, Trump's just saying some bullshit, let him do his own thing. You go, unfortunately, mate, it goes on the wrong ears, mate. You know, for everybody who listens to the White Album, there's always Mark Chapman. You know what I mean?
Yeah, no, I don't think it takes much. I mean, it's an interesting part of the world. They've had, because it's kind of almost where East meets West and Islam meets Christianity. And so through the centuries, it's been a tinderbox anyway. But I could see that kind of stuff happening everywhere. I mean, I started to think about Bosnia, Croatia and Serbia, almost like England, Scotland, Wales. We're all joined, we're all intermarried, everybody's related, like exactly like they were. But if suddenly something went south, you've got that weird mix, you know? And that's
well, this is going to lead me into it, like another conversation me and you had, right? Where I remember I told you I got a new hearing aid, and it was ridiculous because the conversation went from, we were talking about, I'd said to you, "Oh, have you watched Black Mirror?" And we were on about the TV program, and you were like, "I don't really watch much of that TV." And "No, you'll like it, man. It's all about dystopian futures and everything." And then I made an innocuous, like it was a proper innocuous remark. I went, "Oh, I've got a new hearing aid now. It's got Bluetooth on it and that, man." And I said to you, I said, "Man, I'm mad for this transhumanism stuff, man. I want to get all the cybernetic implants in me." You know what I mean? And you turned around to me and went, "No, mate, you don't want that." And do you remember the convo? Because you said to me, you go, "Yeah," because you turned around and you go, no. He goes, "What you want to do is you want to embrace the savage." He goes, "Don't eat anything that's wrapped in plastic. Don't eat processed food." He goes, "You want to go the other way." And I was like that, going, "Nah, but you know, I'll have the fucking robot arm and that. I'll be like the Winter Soldier. No one will Kimura me." Me being stupid. And then I went back, thought about it, and I was like, "Shit, man, Kev Capel's got me again." Made me do the complete 180 on it. because that was it. So can you just explain the thoughts on embracing the savage?
No, I mean, we all kind of have these ups and downs where, you know, you get these opinions. I just get a bit tired of the digital world, which is ironic because I'm in a Zoom meeting right now. But I just get a bit tired of it. And I think when you step out and you go into nature, so we got some nice woods up around here. So you go into the woods for a walk, you feel different. You know, if you disconnect from the internet and all that stuff, and you can stay off your phone. Because I go up the woods and I see people on the phone updating Instagram. It's like, I think you've missed the point. And I'm guilty. And everything I kind of bitch about, I'm guilty of as well. You know, I eat fast food sometimes. I know what is better for me and what isn't. So I'm not trying to preach. But if you can disconnect from all of that social media and just put your phone away for a couple of hours and go out and be in nature, you'll feel better for it. You know, I don't even think that's anecdotal at this point. I think everybody felt that during COVID, where they could only go for a walk because the pub wasn't open. Suddenly everyone's like, I love walking in nature. You know, I think sales of camping gear and stuff has gone through the roof since COVID. People realise that, you know, being out in nature is, you know, for whatever reason, is beneficial. And when you're on the smartphone all the time and always kind of plugged in and you know, when you first put the phone down, you miss it, you know. But if you're always plugged in, you do feel a bit weird sometimes, you know, that scrolling, that constant scrolling, and okay, close that app, open up the other one. I'm going to put the phone down, but before I do, I'm just going to check that app I just closed 5 seconds ago again. All of that stuff is a weird, you know, it's a weird thing. My friend was telling me the other day that they believe that ADHD has gone up a lot in grown-ups, because usually you're born with ADHD, but now you can develop it later in life, which is like a new thing. And some of it's related to how the smartphones are set up. And, you know, I could quite believe that. So I think if getting out in nature and unplugging is good, then putting the smartphone and staying, you know, not embracing all the new stuff is probably good as well, you know, rather than going, okay, I need the headset and this headset, and the more plugged in I am, the better. I'm trying to do less and less of it. I only really now do social media for the benefit of the gym, you know, because the lads are winning stuff. It's only fair that they get recognition for the stuff they're doing. Obviously it's a business, so, you know, marketing and stuff, but most of my personal stuff now isn't really online. I mean, I've got a grandson now and I love him to bits, so I can't help with him, you know, when he does stuff, I can't help but you know, take a picture and put. But that's the new thing. But like me personally, what I'm doing, my training, my you know, outdoor activities or whatever, I don't really put any of that up.
Now, you said something there, Kev. You see, the thing is, it's like you know, we always go on about the algorithm and, you know, the way that you know, they know exactly what to hit you with. And if you're on about the ADHD, that is the truth, because what we need is that instant gratification now. And it was like, I was, believe it or not, ironically watching it on YouTube, a documentary on about social media. And what they did was, one of the first things that they realized on Instagram was they looked at ways to get people addicted. So what they did was they went to Vegas, of all places. And they were like, so how did you manage to get people addicted to gambling? And what and you're thinking right now, you're thinking game theory, you know, I'm going to go full Joe Rogan on it and go, oh, it'd be game theory. It's all, and it was like, no, what it was, they went back to the early days where you had that physical connection to a machine, you pulled down the lever, and then when you let that go, boom, you, first of all, there's something manly about doing that. Secondly, roll, boom. And then they were like, so Instagram turned around and went, right, okay, so what we'll do is you will literally have to physically scroll downwards each time to refresh. And when you refresh, oh, there might be something that titivates me. Oh, you never know, I might get more likes. Guess what? Maybe mine might come up. And it was so funny because I looked at it and I went, shit, I'm dead guilty of that, because I'm a bit like yourself, Kev. One of the things that's thrown at me all the time, my good mate Nathan Leverton always says it. Nathan always says, your biggest problem, Mick, is you on social media, that's not you. He goes, this loving, caring, great mate. He goes, go on it. And it's just some misogynistic dude telling dad jokes and being a complete prick all the time. And he goes, why? And I went, mate, I'm like the comedian in The Watchmen, mate. I know it's a joke. So, you know what I mean? I know it's a joke, so I'm playing the joke. But it was, you said something earlier as well, which I like. So the grandfather thing, right? As the whole martial arts thing, your son Keenan's an absolute ledge, who's killing it at the moment, by the way. So I got to give him a shout out. He's killing it. Yeah. But
he's a real handful. He's a real handful now. Yeah, no, he's got
definitely. So what's it like? What's it like to be a grandfather doing martial arts and still, if you don't mind me saying it, because I'm doing exactly the same at 53, still trying to find my way in the world. Reading Ernest Hemingway now and actually going, I get where you're coming from here, Ernest. You know what I mean? Because you think you're going to be grown up and you're not. What's it like being a grandfather?
I mean, I love it. I love the little lad to bits, Ezekiel. He's amazing. I don't know. I mean, it gives you another purpose to keep going, doesn't it? I mean, we all have these things, I think, that keep us going. Keenan's always been that for me, because when it comes to it, we all care about ourselves or whatever, but at the same time as men, and you tell me if I'm wrong, we don't really give a shit about ourselves. Like, if you're on a journey, going on a journey by yourself, you'll pack different, you'll go to the station different, because you don't care. Fuck it, if I miss the train, I'll just get the next one. If I've got to pack something, I'll just buy it when I'm there. I don't care. Yeah. But like, once you start going, you take your missus or kids, you're more organised because you care for their experience, right? You don't want them to be stressed or whatever. So I think if we're completely by ourselves, we don't really worry about ourselves that much.
No.
But when you've got people who depend on you for whatever, they don't depend on me, but I like having them around. But when you have dependents, kids, you want to be there for them. Like, I don't want to miss anything. Do you know what I mean? I want to be there. I want to be able to give them the benefit of my experience if they want it, because they're going to come up against obstacles in their lives. And I just feel like I'll be in a good place to give them some valid advice. And watching the little man grow up, he's already walking and stuff now. It's like, this is worth getting out of bed for. I mean, me personally, I've got tons of stuff to get out of bed for. The gym, the work I do outside of the gym, Keenan, now my grandson. I've always had tons of stuff to get out of bed for. I've been lucky, but I understand why some people don't keep getting out of bed. I understand why they fall into that depression. And I think something like a new grandson or a grandchild, whatever, I think that is something that is just, you're just so connected to it as a human being. You can't help but be lifted by it. If I see him, it doesn't matter what's happened that day. I'll be in a good mood when I see him.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Whatever has happened in that day, it won't matter. I'll be happy for an hour. So, and it's not, you don't even have to try. When my son and his partner, Charisse, when they said that she was pregnant, I actually got like a rush of adrenaline. It was something uncontrollable to me. It was like, wow, this is actually, it's part of your DNA. Something inside changes. So, being a granddad for me has just been like it's been an amazing year with it. It's been a rough year in some ways with other bits, but for him, having him around, it's been brilliant. Absolutely brilliant. I look forward to seeing how
But you see this thing, Will's a new granddad as well, right? So just recently, and then obviously when you were saying about Keenan being a handful, it's like my son Jack, 3-stripe purple belt now,
right,
mustard. Yeah, I think you might have refed a couple of fights for him.
No, he's good. He's very good.
Yeah, great guy. And it's mad because I don't want to sound like a real tit here. And if I do sound like a real tit, then people need to readjust what they think a tit is, right? Because I never thought, when he was a little boy, and like as I said, I still see it now. And I go to his house and he's got a couple of pictures on his fridge of him as a kid, and my heart just goes, and I'm like, man, and I'm a bit gutted because I'm like that thinking, man, all those great times I had with that little boy. And then as he's got older, it's one of those things, because when people say, oh no, you'll love them even more, and you're like, there's no way, mate, because again, there's two types of dads in the world, right? So there's the dads who spend time with their kids, and then there's dads who have to get the names tattooed on their arms because they forget the name of their kid, right? Yeah. So I didn't, and I know that sounds judgmental, but it's the truth. And I thought, no, I couldn't. And now Jack's like that. And I keep saying to him, I say, mate, I'm ready for a big granddad. I don't want to be an old granddad. I want to teach my grandchildren their first armbar. I want, I mean, I want to have the big Santa Claus beard on me, all of that caper. And again, it is funny because I link this into jiu-jitsu now. It's like I'm now that just feisty old boy in the gym, and it's like, you'll catch him, but he's going to punish you if you give him an inch. And he's going to make you work for everything as well. And then at the end of it, he's going to turn around. He's going to be dead thankful for it. Because I don't know what you're like now, but I'm there and I'm with absolute savages. And they're turning around and saying, you're 5 years older than my dad, Nick. And I'm like, what? And they're like, my dad can't even get out of the chair sometimes. And I'm like, and it's the longevity. Well, I don't know if it is the longevity, by the way, because the thing with jiu-jitsu is the minute you stop, right, 20 minutes later, you can't move. There's no more going upside down. That's physics at work. A body in motion stays in motion. But what I'm framing the question here now is this massive upsurge in jiu-jitsu. Is it the fact that you just feel great about yourself? Is it the mental health issues? Is it because between you and me, I don't think it's the having a rook with a bloke anymore outside of a chip shop. I think we've transcended that. Yeah. So, what is it for you, Kev Capel? What is it that puts you back on the mat every single day?
I don't know. I've just always enjoyed it. I've just always enjoyed training. I mean, I don't know if there's any one thing that keeps me coming back. I mean, there's so many things. I think the one that is popping up right now is the camaraderie. I think that's one of the first things that kept me going to jiu-jitsu, because after you leave an environment like the army, you do kind of miss having the lads around you. You know what I mean? And I think one of the reasons why guys like REORG and things have been so successful, you know, with jiu-jitsu in the military, is because it is an extension of your team. You know, you're part of something, and you're part of something that's not easy. You know, and I know there's tons of good women martial artists, but from a man's point of view, being able to fight is a manly thing. You know, so, and, you know, being in the army is kind of a manly pursuit. I use that word. I know it's probably not the right, you know, I'm a bit of a dinosaur. I don't mean any disrespect, but from a young boy's point of view who was going into the army, it was a manly pursuit, and you're around real men. And if you're in a fighter's gym or a professional gym, you're going to have, you know, it's a manly pursuit, and you're going to be around real men. And, you know, luckily enough, you know, there's enough women and kids and everything that do this as well. But I think that was what kept me coming back, was I was going to see my friends, and we were going to do something difficult. Yeah. You know, having a 5-minute round with someone who's a little bit better than you, that's difficult. Yeah. And you're going to feel like you've been in a fight. And then I think nothing ever gave me as good a workout as jiu-jitsu, because of the sparring. You know, I've had hard rounds on the pads, had hard rounds on Thai pads, had hard rounds boxing, kickboxing. But you can only ever do, for me anyway, shorter sessions of that, because getting punched in the head is difficult. But sometimes you can have 10 rounds of jiu-jitsu and you're not physically beaten up, but you're extremely tired. Yeah. And nothing's ever got me there other than jiu-jitsu, you know, like going running. I'll always kind of find a way to hold myself back a little bit or whatever. But jiu-jitsu, because you've got another person there trying to do the exact opposite of what you're doing, it naturally pushes you to push as hard as you can. Or, you know, so I don't think anything has ever given me that kind of workout. And, you know, the endorphin release and then that self-satisfaction at the end of the day that you did something difficult, jiu-jitsu gives you that in, you know, massive measure. I mean, the days of me been worried about defending myself in a one-on-one situation. I don't tend to have those fears or feelings anymore. One, because I think I know that I've got my ego enough in check to avoid most confrontations. That's the main thing. And then if someone did want to push it, then my conscience is clear, because I kind of know I'm probably in the right, because I avoid, I always try and go out of the way to avoid confrontations, because I know in my heart I'm trying to avoid it. If I end up then swinging it out with someone, I know they're in the wrong. Yeah. So it gives me that moral, that moral edge. Not that that hasn't happened, but so the fight side of things isn't really a concern for me anymore. It's probably the camaraderie, and then the satisfaction of having done a few rounds. Like I've been a bit bashed up lately, so I think yesterday I got a couple of rounds in wrestling, and I felt great for it. That satisfaction of the day, and I had some tough rounds today, and I did okay. That's I don't think you can buy that.
You hit the nail on the head. We have this Friday nights. So, my professor well, Neil Simpkin, right? He's a homicidal maniac.
He's a great guy. I love
he
Neil.
Is. And he's a real old school. Well, you're head referee for his comps.
Yeah, right? yeah. I help grow jiu-jitsu events. Because of Nat, I've been friends with Natalie for a long time, and she's obviously married to Mauricio, who I've been friends with for a long time. But other than that, I think it's only Neil and Katie that I will referee for now, really, just because I know their events are so well run, and they're just such lovely people.
Yeah, they're great. So I always say this about Neil. So we said it for years. I train for me. I can only speak from my personal experience. I don't think you could train with a tougher guy. Right, the late Nick Brooks I'd put up there as well. You know what I mean? We are, man. We have, the score, right, killer. And it's like he'd give you the shirt off his back, but he'd go like, "You'll only get a stripe on your belt when you earned it." And and then it'd be like, "But we're friends, aren't we, Mick? So it's got to be truth there, right?" And that's going to lead me into this thing now, which is, I think it might have been Tom DeBlas said it years ago. You don't know the price of anything until you got something you can't buy. Which is a black belt in jiu-jitsu, right? But the thing that I've noticed when you mentioned REORG, recently, internet went mad, went on even like mainstream media. Like Tom Hardy rocks up, he got kicked in the head by one of my teammates, Damien, the big Polish guy, right? And he rolled. First of all, his jiu-jitsu is really, really good. Secondly, because I really believe this, right? You can't fake being a nice guy that much, because social media goes, and it's like after about 300 pictures of him with kids doing this or pointing at the kid, and I'm like, well, where's the Hollywood star there, right? So famously, Russell Brand started jiu-jitsu with you, right? Or you gave him his blue belt.
He trains with one of my black belts, Chris Clear.
Yeah.
And he come to one of my graders to get his blue belt.
Yeah. But like this
at mine, and I've been down and trained with Chris and Russell a couple of times, but Chris Clear is his instructor.
Yeah. But sorry, to get that right. But the thing is, you got these guys now. I remember the first real celebrity that I knew that did jiu-jitsu was Paul Walker, the guy who was in the Fast and Furious, right? So he was the first guy, but apart from Al Bundy, you know what I mean? Everyone knew that Al Bundy was a black belt in jiu-jitsu.
That's right, yeah.
So, what is it, do you think, that drives people like, every interview I've ever seen with Tom Hardy, he comes over as a very intelligent man. Russell Brand, I consider myself a well-read individual, and he's like a brainiac. So, what is it? So what is it that's bringing these guys to jiu-jitsu, from your opinion?
Well, I mean, the same stuff that brings us to it, for sure. But what I believe the celebrities get is their celebrity doesn't matter. And most of the time, jiu-jitsu is pretty real. They will just be on the mat as a white belt and then a blue belt. Russell Brand doesn't get to stand at the front of the queue because he's Russell Brand, he stands a few down because he's a purple belt. Yeah. And that's probably a massive weight off his shoulders. And I haven't spoke to him about this, so I don't know. I'm just using Russell because he's a celebrity that I know. But I know that Henry Cavill trains a lot at Rogers, does privates with Roger, and he was coming to Rogers quite a bit. And I think, you know, they probably don't get to high five and hug and be spoke to like a normal person by normal people very often when they're Hollywood level of fame. And one, we bring them down a peg or two, because if they're new, they're going to get beaten up, even if they are Superman in the fake world. He's not Superman at Rogers, right? Yeah. So the white belt, he's going to get twisted up. That's a humbling experience. And they probably don't get humbled much if they're successful millionaires. I don't know, because I'm not a successful millionaire, but you know what I mean? But I think that part of their world that probably weighs quite heavy at times probably is stripped away from them in the Jiu-Jitsu Academy. And, you know, Mauricio has always said this: doesn't matter how much money you got in your bank. When you're on the mat, it's just you, your gi, and your belt. And that is probably quite a lot of weight off their shoulders sometimes.
Yeah, well, you see this. Yeah, you see, you've just hit on something there. I've said it before when people ask me why I love jiu-jitsu so much, and I'm like, I'm a middle child, I'm Irish, and I'm Catholic. So the problem is, like, I embrace, you know, that there's a real masochistic side to me, and if it isn't painful, I don't believe it's worth it. And I have to admit, as I'm getting older, I have to reconcile that with the whole, you know, where you're getting beaten up and you're feeling beat up sometimes. But I've been spending a lot of time thinking about this, because there's a line I pull out all the time when I'm rolling with the guys. I'm like, come on, lads, in 16 years' time, I'm 70. How can't you batter me? You know what I mean? And like, you're rolling around, you're having a laugh and everything. But it's like, I'm looking at it and I'm thinking the old Danny Santo thing, which is, he only started jiu-jitsu at 59. And like, that's going to lead me into like what I think, because I love your take on this. Like, I had a conversation years ago. We went down to train at Rogers, Ladbroke Grove. He was getting ready for his MMA fight. James Zikic was there. Monstro was there. And I went down with Braulio and Neil. Sticky was there as well. Dave Iverson from GD Tampa. Yeah, Sticky, top guy. And we were going down there, and I said, what am I going to do here, mate? I think I was a blue belt at the time. I said, what am I going to do? And Neil says, oh, no, we're not doing jiu-jitsu, we're sparring. So I went down there, and we're all in the car, we're having a bit of a crack at that. And Braulio, saying to Braulio, I'm saying, mate, you know, everyone thinks jiu-jitsu is great at the moment. I said, but wait until normal people and kids get into it. I said, because we're only hitting the demographic of the 16 to 32-year-old male. You know, guys who read Loaded magazine back 10 years ago, you know what I mean? I said, now people are getting into it. And like, I don't know about you, Kev, I've never seen anything explode. This is like the old karate boom of Bruce Lee, right? And that's what we're seeing right now. Is the sky the limit, or what do you think it's going to get diluted like everyone says it's going to? Or what's your take?
No. I don't think things keep growing. I think, you know, or certainly not at the rate that we've experienced in the last 15 years. I don't know. Is football still growing?
Yeah,
I don't know.
But it's part. Yeah, but see, it's part of society now. I think that's where jiu-jitsu is going to be.
No, and I think that's what I mean. You know, I think eventually, especially with the UFC has been a really big help for functional martial arts, for want of a better term. But I think everyone knows what I mean by that.
Yeah,
stuff that actually works or would work. I know you can make all kinds of arguments, but MMA, in particular UFC, has made this a cultural thing, like a global culture thing, rather than just because it is global. And anywhere where there's young men, they'll be fighting of some kind. You know, you just get two brothers together, they'll be fighting. So we've all kind of got this in us. So I think MMA has become part of global culture. And as long as there's MMA, there'll be an element where you need to know what you're doing on the ground. And there's always some naysayers who, because we put a label on it and called it jiu-jitsu, they will want to put a different label on it and call it Sambo or CSW or Niwaza, whatever. But I think at this point you can call it what you like. It's jiu-jitsu, or for me it'll always be jiu-jitsu, in particular Brazilian jiu-jitsu, because they were the guys that did flip the switch a little bit and make everybody. If there's one thing that can't be denied, in '93 in the UFC, people realised, even maybe not the first one, but by the third one, people were definitely like, do you know what? You need to be able to grapple. And wherever you go to learn that grappling is irrelevant, but the Brazilians showed it first. They showed it to the world. But yeah, as long as fighting involves punching and kicking, clinching, standing and taking your person to the ground, and then controlling someone on the ground and either hitting them or submitting them, as long as a fight always looks like that, jiu-jitsu will always have a place, and more people will probably want to do it until it gets to saturation point, or weird laws come in where you're not allowed to do fight sports anymore, or stuff like that. But I think maybe how about this, Mick? How about it was already in the culture already, but it just was a bit dormant, and it was just being reawakened, because there's always been folk grappling and people have always fought. The rules got changed. I mean, there was people were fighting MMA until the Marquis of Queensberry started breaking things up, and right.
Yeah.
So
they used to have an all in.
Yeah.
That was what it was. It was an all in, and then obviously, I'm a bit of a purist when it comes to this sort of stuff. It was like you go and train with James Figg. You weren't just boxing; you were learning the short stick, the cudgel. You know what I mean? And he wanted you to grapple as well. And it's like, it is what you were saying. It's like when you said flip the switch, that got me going, because it is cultural. It's like, I saw an interview with you a couple of months ago where you were talking about now it's like Islam Makhachev come in. Yeah, you didn't mention this, by the way, but you were on about Islam and Habib and stuff. And it was like Islam came in and he made Charles Oliveira look like an ordinary guy.
Yeah,
right? So. And it was like you mentioned about how Sharapova, she was a champ, and then next thing you know, that they inspire, right? And it was like you said, the Dagestani thing, because I really liked how you said it. So I'd like you to say, we were talking about the Prangley fight with Roger.
Yeah, with Roger.
Yeah. If you give that breakdown, please, because I love the way that you explained it.
Well, I mean, everyone was commenting on Habib's Dagestani handcuff, because that's kind of a signature move in his grappling, where he's got the arm trapped from around the back and the wrist trapped. And when I watched Roger fight Trevor Prangley, he used exactly the same move, and I like to talk to Roger about this kind of stuff. And I said, I see you using that, and Habib uses it a lot, and they call it the Dagestani handcuff. I just wondered, why use it? And he's like, yeah, because that's how you do it properly. That's good. Because he's a good grappler. That's why he does that move. He understands grappling. And this goes back to Bruce Lee. You can give stuff labels all you want, but at the end of the day, it's just martial arts. It's just when something's done right, it's done right. I've seen boxers do reverse punches like they're doing karate, to the body, and they land it, and it wins people. If something's done properly,
a punch is a punch. A punch is a punch, and a kick is a kick, man. Yeah. That's literally it. I'm just going to ask you, in all of the martial arts that you've done, right? Was there anything that you'd like to have, studied but you didn't do, or is that something that you're looking towards? So it could be another grappling art, could be a striking art, it could be something that just now, as you're getting older, you think might suit you.
Not that springs to mind. I mean, I think I was always searching for some good wrestling back in the day when I was doing MMA. Someone who really knew wrestling. We had a guy who was NCAA Division 2 at Rogers. He might have been Division 1, but I think it was Division 2. Damien Switlick, great wrestler. And when I wrestled with him, you could feel the difference. and I never made it down to the Tokai at London Bridge because London was tricky. You know, if I'd gone to London, I wanted to train at Rogers. And if I trained at Rogers, I was too tired to go and do a new wrestling session. So I think there's actually a guy in Aylesbury now who does some I think it's some Eastern European wrestling. I think he's Romanian. I'm not, I wrestle okay now. I've kind of got a little bit of a game. We wrestle on a Saturday morning at my gym. We've got some good wrestlers here. But I think back in the day, if there was one regular class as easy to get to as judo or boxing, then I wish it had been wrestling. I wish there'd just been some really decent wrestling coach in the area that I could have got to, because traveling to London 2 or 3 times a week for me was about the limit of how much I could travel for training. Yeah. Financially and physically and all that kind of stuff. Because for the people that don't know, the trip to Rogers was, I got lucky with Mauricio's first place. It was less than an hour. But then after that, it was always an hour and a half on a good run. So then you'd have to allow 2 hours because you don't want to be late. Yeah. So time consuming and, there's a financial burden to training as well. So finding something in London, it didn't fit because I wanted my black belt. To be fair, I wanted to be that level. The belt is significant, but I wanted to get really, really good at jiu-jitsu or try and be the best I could be at it. So that was my purpose in London. But if there'd have been some wrestling on a Monday night in Aylesbury somewhere, then that would have been awesome. A good American coach or Eastern European coach or now knowing what we know, a Dagestani coach, that'd have done me wonders. I think I'm smart enough to figure some stuff out. But yeah, if there was one thing missing.
Yeah, wrestling's the one. I remember years ago I spoke to Bisping about it, and because Bisping's kid's a killer, right? And you'll see him. Yeah, and you see him on Instagram now, and and Michael turned around and go, "Can't do anything." But I remember spoke to Bisping, I spoke to Dan Hardy about it, and it was like, my generation, he goes, we're not going to make it. He goes, because it's that wrestling base that these guys have got. It's like, Bisping always says, he got lucky. He got lucky, and again, from that one sparring session against Rockhold in the gym, and then went viral on it. And it was like, what was it like? He goes, unofficially, I'm the Strikeforce middleweight champion, right? And he just made that one remark, and then Rockhold went mad. He managed to get in there. And it was like he said, he goes, he knows he was quite lucky in the second fight, right? So he knows that. But the wrestling, especially, because I'm a big fan of wrestling. Like I'm from carnival wrestling, from the old days of Farmer Burns, Frank Gotch, Carl Gotch, Hacken Smith, all of those, as you were saying, it sounds really lame when I say it, but manly dudes who they were killers. And then right up to even, like John Smith, you see a John Smith single leg and you're like that going. Yeah. That's Picasso to me. I don't know what, I can't do that. I don't really understand the mechanics. All I know is I'm just seeing greatness at work. It's like, when you watch Foxcatcher, the movie, and you see it, and because that's Rocky for wrestling, right? Good and film. You look at it, it's a great film, and it's unreal. Yeah, wrestling's the one. And I don't know about you. What I find is paradoxically, you speak to people about wrestling in the UK, they'll go, "What? Big Daddy, Giant Haystacks,
no clue.
Rocco."
I mean, I guess that's evidence that it's in the culture, but it's been so pantomime. It's like a pantomime. But yeah, I mean, I guess I grew up watching wrestling on a Saturday afternoon, Big Daddy, and that is what people think of when you say wrestling in the UK. But again, it does kind of prove that it's in the culture. Okay, it's a comedy form, but wrestling was something people would go and watch.
Well,
but
you go up to the Snake Pit, you go to Wigan, you go to old Billy Riley's when it was a Billy Riley Snake Pit. Those guys, and they were guys. I can't imagine how tough those guys were, working down a mine, doing jobs that no one wanted. And then how do you relax? I strangle my mates. And even as I'm saying that, I'm laughing. I go, what do? I plaster all day, and then I go and strangle my mates. And I'm like, yeah, but I don't feel like a tough guy. And you're thinking maybe they didn't either. Maybe it was just what they did. What I'd like to just wrap up on, right, Kev, is like it's more, and this is pure vanity on my point here to ask you this, because I've never asked you this, because we've talked about stuff that's always got like a philosophical lean into it, right? And like, I'll admit to you, I got into Stoicism for literally, I fell into it. I've always wanted to study philosophy. Like, this is what I'm going to do. At 60 years of age, I'm jacking the plastering in. I'm going back and I'm going to do a degree in philosophy. First of all, because I'll never be able to pay the tuition fees back because I'll be dead. I'll never have to pay back the student loan because I'm going to be able to work out a way that makes it look like I'm going to do it. And do you know why I want to do it? Because I want to be a philosopher. I want to sit there with my thoughts, think about heavy shit, write it down and try and make sense of it all, right? And the thing is, you're probably one of the most philosophical people I know. And we've never talked about this. Like, have you formally even read anything about philosophy, or is this all just empirical shit you picked up along the way?
Mainly shit I picked up along the way, to be fair. But I'm aware of philosophers, Seneca and Stoicism, and I've probably listened to a few audiobooks on it, but no, I'm not well read. But I think it's hard to have been studying martial arts as long as we've been studying it, and for it just not to creep in. Because Bruce Lee wouldn't be up there as one of the world's top philosophers unless you know martial arts. And then you'd know what he was really about and how smart he really was. If you have a conversation with Roger, he's one of the most stoic people in the world, mate. When you think about the things that he's achieved in his life and how easy he's made it look, and I know it weren't easy because I see him train for this stuff, you don't get no bullshit out of him. And he's a very, very deep thinker. Only when you ask him his opinion on a fight, you'll get a very deep opinion, he'll prove his depth of knowledge. And he's not trying to prove his depth of knowledge. It certainly feels like he's having a natural conversation. Yeah. But someone like me, I look at it and I'm like, man, he's stoic. He's a proper stoic. One of the things he said to me, I think I was competing at blue belt. He said something like, whoever controls their emotions the best will win the fight. So he wasn't even talking about who's the toughest, who's got the best technique. For a long time, he's like, you've just got to control your emotions. Yeah.
It's funny.
Which makes a lot of sense.
It's funny you say this because Neil Simpkin always says it, because he quotes it. Neil won't mind me. Yeah. The beauty with Neil is Neil's one of my best friends in the world, and he didn't even watch my interview with him. So I can say whatever I want here because I know he'll never hear it, right? No, but he's cool, he's such a cool guy, Neil is. But it's like Neil said to me, he goes, one of the most profound things he ever heard from Roger was giving out, so he's coaching somebody. So, it's no pass, the usual Brazilians, how they do it, And Roger was just shouting, and he was doing fire in the belly, ice in the brain. And he was just going, fire in the belly, ice in the brain, fire in the belly, ice in the brain. And then Neil's saying it to me, and I'm going, I got fire in the brain and ice in the belly and a full pair of underpants, mate. I said, I don't even want to be here. I'm shitting it. But yeah, this stoicism thing is, I don't know about you. It's like, I'm reading this, and like, especially Seneca, Aurelius as well, Cicero, these guys, I'm reading this stuff and I'm like, this is like 2022 Coventry. You wrote this how many thousand years ago, and all of it is not even relevant. I'm like, shit, this guy's talking to me. Yeah. And it's one of that, because it's a philosophy. I really believe this. So just forgive me for this one. Indulge me this bit. I think that sort of philosophy is like whiskey. It's the sort of thing that unless you're old, you won't appreciate it. It's you understand where I'm coming from.
Yeah, so, I mean, my brain works completely different now how it did when I was a young guy. I mean,
yeah.
all that knowledge was wasted on me, really. When I was young and in the army, either I thought I knew best or my sergeant knew best. And if you weren't part of that, you didn't know what was going on. Do you know what I mean? And if I didn't know what you were talking about, it wasn't important. That's why I didn't need to know it. Do you know what I mean? So
yeah,
probably a lot of young men are like that. But now I'm like, but if I don't know it, I need to take a look at it and figure out whether it's worth knowing or not. So philosophy has crept in, and then it popped into my head then, actually. I get a lot of Seneca quotes when I scroll on Instagram. So when I'm
the algorithm knows us well, man.
It knows. And guys like Jordan Peterson, even Joe Rogan with his podcast has brought so many different aspects into the way I look at things. And because I used to listen to the Rogan podcast almost religiously, because he had guys that were fighters and they spoke about MMA, or comedians, which are funny, and they talk about MMA. So I didn't want to listen to Radio 1 or watch the news or whatever. So I'd watch Rogan whenever it come out. I'm not really like that anymore. What I tend to do now is I'll watch an interesting one, and then I'll start going on that person's podcast or watching their films or their documentaries. And so Jordan Peterson, Jocko Willink, I'm a big fan of because he's a military guy, and he's an amazing guest. If you're a military fan, some of the guests on his podcast are out of this world. The guys that work behind the lines in Vietnam, the SOG guys working in Cambodia and Laos, them podcasts are amazing. They're amazing. But Jordan Peterson on the philosophy side, would you call Peterson philosophy? Jordan Peterson, would you class him as?
Well, you see, this is the thing. I've got friends of mine, like my good friend Nathan Leviton hates Peterson, right? Hates him with a passion. And he goes, I can't believe you don't like him. And I went, I can't believe you don't like him. And then what I'll do is every now and again I'll go on Facebook, and what I'll do is I'll put up something about Peterson, and then I go, great man. And they go, he was addicted to painkillers. And I went, all good men stumble. And then they go, he reckons eating meat. And I'm like, all good men make mistakes. And like the thing is, with Peterson, I agree with probably about 70%. The 30% I don't agree with, I really don't agree with. Like it's literally a 180 turn. It's a bit like I listen to Ben Shapiro and I like 20% of what he's got, but the 20% I really like. But with Peterson, what I like is I like the way that he uses analogies from old stories, like biblical stories, and then he'll bring Harry Potter into it. Then he brings zeitgeisty stuff into it as well. And then with Peterson, what I liked about it, where everyone was going crazy, because he came to the forefront on that compelled speech thing, right? And he was saying, there's never been a time in English common law where you've been told to say something. And then he said, the problem is all tyranny starts from a good place. Chairman Mao never got into power into China and go, I'm going to kill 50 million of you guys. He thought he had their best interests at heart, right? And when everyone gives me a hard time about Peterson, I'm like, but you got to remember, Peterson, the first thing he did was a caveat behind everything that he said was, at the moment, what you're saying, I get it. There's some empathy behind it. People's feelings are being hurt, and you don't want to make anyone go through life having a shit time. But at the moment, you're saying for me to do something nice. In 5 years' time, you might be getting to say something else. And then and it's a dark road you go down. So I really like Peterson. And even with all this stumbling, I still like him. Like more now, I listen to more Lex Friedman than anyone, because he's just an interesting guy.
I think Roger's going on Lex Friedman in the next couple of weeks.
No way. Oh, that would be really good.
It's coming up soon. It'll be on there soon, so it'll be worth a look.
Yeah, well, you see, this is I was speaking to a few mates of mine, and me and Nathan were chatting about this. Me and Nathan Leviton, and I said, because I used to always embarrass Nathan and call him the English John Danaher, because he was footlocking, and like again with Nathan had to basically teach himself because there was nobody out there. So and he became one of the most successful grappling coaches in the UK in early MMA, right? And we were talking about it, and he goes, oh yeah, but I find Danaher really boring. And I went, but I've trained with John. John is really boring. he's great at jiu-jitsu and interested in the stuff he's interested in, but then everything after that, not really. He's a bit like Rain Man in a rash guard, you know what I mean? But I said to him, I said, look, I was Lex Friedman and him together, two guys with monotone voices, right? So it was almost like listening to like audible Mogadon, because I was feeling like they put me to sleep. But what they were saying was so profound. I'm like, man, it's unreal. Is there anybody out there that you'd like to be a guest of, apart from Joe Rogan, obviously, and me, right? Who would you do a show with if you're anybody you could pick?
Well, I'd like to sit down with Jocko. He's pretty cool. But again, my stories from the army aren't like the ones I've listened to on his show. I mean, he has some real legit tip of the spear guys on there. But I like Jocko. I think his podcast's really good. I don't know. I mean, like I say, lately the social media stuff, I don't really listen to a lot. I don't really watch a great deal. Just mark it in the gym. So I don't even know who's got what going on now with podcasts and stuff. But yeah, no, Jocko was a good one to listen to back in the day.
Jocko still is, and the thing is, man, he talks the talk. He's got that origin company.
He's legit.
And he's investing in everything. He invests in all the people around him, and he's used. And like, we live in interesting times because people are using this platform now. Like Joe Rogan, I always liked him on Fear Factor. I thought he was a decent enough comedian. Like, saw him train like a savage, really inspirational. But even like he says, I had no idea it was going to. Do you think he thought he was going to be a billionaire out of this?
He smashed it, mate. He's absolutely killed it with his podcast. Fair play to him. Yeah, like you say, you know, I didn't really have an opinion on him before. I thought he was a good MMA commentator, and obviously being a jiu-jitsu guy and him commentating, breaking down the jiu-jitsu the way he did, I respected him for that. But yeah, his podcast I enjoyed, but yeah, no one see it. Hundreds of millions of pounds on.
But we never thought, you know, Mexican ground karate was never going to take off either, Kev. And look where we are today, mate. It's unreal. But bro, I tell you what we'll do is we'll sign off on that because I know you've had a real busy day. If you want to give a shout out, I know we've like lambasted social media savagely, but ironically, it is our master. So do you want to give a shout out like to the socials so that people can find out more about you? If you're in the Aylesbury, if you don't mind me, I'm doing the infomercial for you here. If you're in the Aylesbury area or the surrounding areas, and you want to train with literally one of the nicest guys, and as I said at the start of the show, right, a real OG, which you are, you're there at the beginning. Professor Kev Capel's the man, I'm telling you. So Kev, where can they get you?
The main place now is the gym in Aylesbury, RGA Bucks. We're right in Aylesbury Town Centre by the train station. RGAbucks.com. We've got a bunch of really good coaches here, not just me. All the coaches here are fantastic. Come down. We give you a week free trial. Come see whether you like it or not. Simple as that, really.
Kev, you're the man. I tell you what, I'm so glad it's taken me 6 years to get to you, right? But mate, it was unreal.
Sports Social Podcast Network.
With the Lucky Land Slots, you can get lucky just about anywhere.
This is your captain speaking. We've got clear runway and the weather's fine, but we're just going to circle up here a while and get lucky. No, nothing like that. It's just these cash prizes add up quick. So I suggest you sit back, keep your tray table upright, and start getting lucky.
Play for free at LuckyLandSlots.com. Are you feeling lucky? No purchase necessary. Void where prohibited by law. 18+ terms and conditions apply. See website for details.